Do they have him picked off? Oh, they got him!
How do you go back to the dugout?
You don't.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had an unbelievable 2021 season. As a 22-year-old, he hit 48 home runs and had an OPS over 1,000. He had played well in the 2 seasons prior given his age, but this season felt like a huge breakout for him as he far surpassed his previous production, and the accolades followed with that. He was an All-Star, won a Silver Slugger Award, and placed second in MVP voting to Shohei Ohtani. For Blue Jays fans like myself, a big season like this felt inevitable given the expectations surrounding him. Admittedly, the degree of improvement and how early it came was a bit surprising. But nonetheless, the expectations for Vladdy after his 2021 season were extremely high. Here's a look at his MLB rankings for a few stats from that season. Looking at his 2022 season, his numbers took a big dip from 2021. That's not to say he had a bad year, but certainly a bit lackluster compared to the expectations from the year prior. Despite him winning the Gold Glove, I find it hard to argue that he's made significant contributions on defense so far in his career, meaning his production at the plate has to make up for that. And I think in 2022, even with the decline in production from the previous year, he still did that. Here's a look at his MLB rankings for some stats in 2022. Moving on to 2023, there was another dip in his production, and a lot of his stats more closely resemble his first 2 seasons in the league rather than the previous 2 seasons. It was a pretty disappointing year overall. His offensive production wasn't bad, but certainly below expectations, especially for a first baseman. And his defense continued to not be anything special, leading to a year where he looked more like a slightly above average player than the high production slugger that many Blue Jays fans hoped for. Here's a look at his MLB rankings for some stats in 2023. So that's how Vladdy's last 3 seasons have gone. A ridiculous 2021 season, followed up by a good 2022, followed up by a pretty disappointing 2023. So what happened? Why has his production declined since 2021? There's a lot of different reasons that are being put out there, so let's take a look at a couple. One reason I've seen talked about frequently is his launch angle, and it makes sense to talk about given the decline in his home runs each year since 2021. I think this argument would have made more sense prior to the 2023 season though. In 2021, his average launch angle was 9.4 degrees. That dropped down to 4.3 in 2022, a pretty significant decrease. But in 2023, his average launch angle was back up to 10.5 degrees. That's shown in his batted ball stats as well. His ground ball rate in 2023 was almost exactly the same as 2021, and even though his fly ball rate was a bit lower, he was hitting more line drives. Another reason that I've seen talked about is his plate discipline and some of the swing decisions he's been making. This might not be the whole problem, but it's definitely part of it. His walk rate dropped significantly from 2021 to 2022, and then he improved a bit this past season. The rate that he swung at pitches outside of the zone in 2023 was almost identical to his rookie season. If you watched the Jays a lot this year, that probably doesn't come as much of a surprise. He seemed to be biting on a lot of sliders outside of the zone. A third reason that I see talked about pretty frequently is his fluctuation in weight. I'm not sure how much emphasis to put on this because I didn't really notice huge changes when I watched him these past few years. But it does make me laugh reading some of the articles that have come out prior to spring training claiming his loss of like 30 to 40 pounds within a month. But now for the reason that I want to talk about the most, because it seems to be the most frequently mentioned. And that's the inflation of his stats from playing in Buffalo and Dunedin for over half of his home games in 2021. When you look at his numbers in those 2 stadiums compared to Rogers Center, it feels like the easiest conclusion to come to. Here's a look at his stats in the 3 stadiums, as well as his stats on the road, just to compare. He performed extremely well at Rogers Center and on the road, but his stats in Buffalo and Dunedin are ridiculous. In Toronto, he hit 10 home runs in 35 games. Between Buffalo and Dunedin, he hit 21 in 44 games. And on the road, he hit 17 in 82 games. I think something that comes into everyone's mind when they see these numbers is the ballpark dimensions. A lot of people assume that the ballparks in Dunedin and Buffalo must have closer and shorter outfield walls, allowing for Vladdy to hit home runs more easily. I don't feel like the ballpark dimensions are too different though, to be honest. Here's a comparison of Rogers Center prior to the renovations, Solon Field in Buffalo, and TD Ballpark in Dunedin. The outfield walls were barely closer and were actually taller in most areas than in Toronto at the time. You can also look at expected home runs by ballpark on Baseball Savant, and see that his 48 home runs would have been pretty reasonable in most ballparks, except for the notoriously big outfields. So yeah, he had unbelievable stats in Dunedin and Buffalo, but I don't think it had much to do with the ballparks. In conclusion, it's a highly debated topic why Vladdy has gone through this decline in production since 2021. There's been a lot of different reasons brought forward, and it's hard to place the blame on just one thing. It's also hard to judge how much of a role his mentality has played. Decline or not though, Vladdy has been a great player for the Jays, and he's only 24 years old. He has plenty of time to figure out what he needs to do to get back to his 2021 form, and a long career ahead of him. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Jack of All Baseball, and I'll see you next time.